Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Cloud Cafe. Today we are jumping to the world of Google again, and for the occasion we have a very special guest. His name is Fahd Ekadioin, and he is a partner engineering and also co-organizer of both the GCP user group BeNeLux and the Kubernetes Days set in Amsterdam. With Fahd, we're gonna deep dive into what you need in order to build your skills and set your career path to be successful in life. And also, we're gonna jump deeper into the GCP user group BeNeLux, because today we're gonna have two hosts. And the first one at this time with me is my colleague Annemieke, which is also the co-organizer of the GCP user group BeNeLux.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it was very interesting. We spoke about the Google Cloud User Group and the essence of having a community around you. How Fahd learned from his best practices, that it's very useful to be open to feedback, that delegating is elevating, that you should learn from every situation. And that is not always the best approach to have a 5 years plan.
Definitely. Keep it flexible, guys, and stay connected with us to find out more who's the person behind the cloud.
Welcome, Fahd, first of all.
Thank you.
In our 5th episode.
Wow.
Already.
It's running fast.
Yeah.
Is it a weekly thing now?
Bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So we are very happy that you're here. And, you are a partner engineer at Google.
Yes.
Father of 2.
Yes. Happily married.
Happily married. Big fan of riding your motorcycle.
Yes.
You speak Berber.
Also, I speak 5 languages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, a bit more, but let's keep it with 5. 5 I can do properly.
So Berber,
Arabic, Dutch,
yeah,
English.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you get a mix of a bit of Spanish and French, and let's say it's 4. 4 properly. 4 I can
just
do
want to
business
say,
with.
is that a new language like Spanish, French?
Yeah. So the thing is with languages, you think you know the language, but when then you try it out, you don't know the language. But when you're stuck in a situation, like I was in France and there was a person not speaking English,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I was fluent. So it depends on the moment. I got in an argument with an Italian guy at the parking lot, and all of a sudden I kind of understood what he said. So yeah, it's
Out of necessity.
yeah,
It's inside of you.
No, it's also, I like to travel, so Italy is one of my favorite countries. I went to France last summer as well, so maybe that helps a little bit with languages.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably you visit Italy already for...
I've been in many places,
Yeah.
and I would like to go back.
Well, Fahd, definitely you're a kind of a special guest, I would say. It doesn't happen every single day, at least to work for a kind of a, how can we say, super famous company as Google.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that when I read your background and what you did priorly, you already work with kind of popular companies, at least in the Netherlands. But I dare to believe that once you start working for Google, the reality that you jump in, the dimension and the overall job that you do takes a completely different twist. For the good, of course.
Yeah, definitely. So, fun anecdote. I once applied for a Google role back in 2017. And I was working at bol.com back then, and I was engaging with Google. I met them at a conference, and I was like, oh, wow, I want to do this thing. So I read the job description, I prepared. I was like, I'm going to nail this. I got rejected.
At which stage?
Like not even reading my CV stage.
No!
Yes.
Shit.
So I got the door slammed in my face, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. So, in all honesty, it didn't really put me down. I was like, okay, shit happens. I would rather have some feedback on what I need to work on, or have at least the first conversation. Never happened, and I let it slide. Fast forward 3 years later, I got asked to work for Google. So that's I still had to go through the interviews, of course, but that just changes the narrative. So for me, it felt like a rejection, but then on the other hand, I was like, maybe I wasn't ready, or maybe Google wasn't ready for me, and time flies and things change. The other thing is that now I'm also helping Google recruit, so I'm doing a lot of interviews within Google. I'm as they call it, a Google champion. I have preliminary phone calls with candidates that want to ask questions, so just to make them comfortable before the process, before they even apply, they could have a conversation with me through a system within Google. What you notice is that a lot of people within Google get hired on the second time. So getting rejected the first time feels horrible, but it shouldn't, because it actually should prepare you for the next time you would apply. And if you look at the recruitment system within Google, it also supports that. So having a first interview, your second interview, and maybe you fail the last interview, it still gives you time to come back at some other time and do the last interview again. So just from that perspective, it's very encouraged to apply twice, 3 times, 4 times. Some people exaggerate, I would say.
There is always
there's some
the blurry line between applying and over-applying.
Just apply on everything. But in general, a lot of people, they apply the second time and they do get hired, or at least they get further, or they get more feedback. Yeah,
and it tells something about your motivation, right?
Yeah, that as well. So initially, when I read about it, I was like, oh, when you get rejected, you try again. That feels odd, but if you flip it around, it's a motivational thing.
Yeah.
So you really want the thing, and you got rejected because your knowledge was not up to par. Study hard, put in the effort, and come back. And when you come back, you maybe nailed the last interview. So it's interesting philosophy, because in a lot of situations, you would look at the CV, and if you see it again, you'd be like, what's wrong with this person? But instead of that, the Google philosophy is try again. So yeah, I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, sometimes I think also doesn't matter, the company is just not the right time, and also if you know someone that is working and hence you have a second chance, let's say you also have way more time to show yourself from a broader perspective than just seeing a CV and assuming who's the person behind.
True. Yeah. I think the other thing is that you learn after a while that CVs are not everything. And I've interviewed people that have tremendous CVs, but then the nerves kick in because, oh my God, I'm applying for Google. So the first thing I try to do in these interviews is tell people, listen. And people that might see the podcast, might respond like, hey, he did that to me. I tell them, listen, this should be fun. So I actually lay out what we're going to do. I especially say at the end of the time, we'll have like 5 minutes for you to ask questions about Google, ask anything, and I'll answer anything I can answer. I also tell them it shouldn't be like, I'm not going to dig hard on a specific topic and tell me how this command works on this product, because you can Google that. So
in the first place,
what does it say about your knowledge if you know something specifically? What I would like to see is, are you able to explain X, Y, Z in a proper way? Also, how you should explain to customers. Do you understand digital transformation? Do you understand the challenges of legacy systems and whatnot? Instead of specific, tell me this answer or you're bad. So I try to explain, and still people are super nervous, and I take the edge off in the beginning by telling a little bit about myself, about, for example, that I applied twice, and that Google is a very nice company, and the way we see things. And at some point you see the nerves go down, but not with everyone. So sometimes the nerves seem to spike up at question 1. Like, how are you? And like, oh my God, I'm good. So it's a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That says a lot also of the human part, how crucial it is, and there are skills. Now, I don't want to call back the rhetoric, let's say, but there are plenty of skills that you can easily teach, or in this case, as you say, you can even Google it. But attitude, the way that you go through problems, and the real part of you, that's the real deal that you have to show. I think it doesn't matter the position at the end.
No, and I think the other thing is that within Google, you have 3 interviews. And for any role, you have to do 2 of the 3 anyway. So if you're applying for a cloud engineer, for a salesperson, or for a researcher, you have to do the first 2. And only if you pass the first 2, you get to the role-related one. The reason is that they want likely-minded people, and the likely-minded people will have to pass the first 2 interviews. Yeah. So looking at that also creates a certain atmosphere and vibe, and I would say also it's a bit of a culture thing within Google that we like to cherish.
Yeah. Hey, and you just said like, well, I applied to Google, I got rejected, and like 3 years later, they asked me to join the company. What happened in those 3 years?
I think the market picked up significantly, so Google's growing massively. That's definitely a factor. And by the time I applied, it was back in 2017. The cloud space looked different. Also, looking at the amount of people they needed and had in Amsterdam, there was not that much as compared. Like we're now almost, I think, hitting 350 people within cloud in Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the days, there were like 50.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to be like 51, and then they maybe look differently at CVs, or maybe they had a massive influx of CVs, and then you have the luxury of sifting through them and making a decision. And of course, the decision is made. I don't know who made it, and every time I tell the joke to people, they're like, "Oh, what? Did that really happen to you?" I'm like, "Yeah, but whatever."
Yeah.
Can we figure out who did that? I'm like, what's the point? And like Google wasn't ready for me, and maybe I wasn't even ready for Google back then. And, And the thing is, if you feel down after such a situation, then it might be damaging for your career. If you maybe feel not worthy enough. But in my case, I was like, oh whatever.
Yeah.
What's the next thing we're gonna do?
Is this your general approach in life?
Yes. Yeah. If you, I mean, you looked at whatever I've done. Bol was mentioned earlier. I am as transparent as I can be, especially in worker relationships. So I have no poker face. Of course, everybody has a poker face, but in my case, if I don't like it somewhere, if I don't feel I can make enough impact, you will firstly see it, and then you will notice that I will resign. Of course, I will try to change. I will try to improve. I'll try to improve the situation. But to use the Bol example, shout out to Bol. Bol is a great employer. I currently work with them every now and then. I work with Xebia and Bol on different occasions. I still have a lot of good friends there. But when I worked at Bol.com, I couldn't find my, as we say in Dutch, draai. So I couldn't click. And the way they operated and the way I wanted to operate was completely different. And that caused friction.
Yeah.
Initially tried to work around the friction, but at some point I was like, I'm not feeling it.
No.
So I went on holiday. I created a mental scale for myself and just made the scale and said, okay, great things and not so great things. And the balance was off. And the first thing I did when I came back, I resigned. And when they asked me like, but why? And I gave them the explanation. I gave them the good points, the bad points. And I said, I made my decision already. So it's not something that, when I make a decision like that, it's over. And I didn't have a new job lined up or anything. So I just resigned. And then I looked around, okay, what I'm going to do next. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also brave, huh? To really feel like, hey, this is not my place anymore. I thought about it. And I will just, move on without having something new.
There's this thing that's called silently quitting. I find that the most horrible thing ever, where people technically quit at the job and still remain employed because they get a salary.
Yeah.
I mean, what's good about having a salary and not caring much about the company? I don't have that in my DNA. If I could do that, maybe I would do that back then and maybe take longer to figure out what I'm going to do next. But no. I remember my wife telling me, so I talk about my job at home and I stopped talking about Bol, and she was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, what do you mean? And like, you like work depressed or something? And then I was explaining to her what was happening, and you want to keep the good news in, and the bad news I don't want to share that openly until I have figured out what was causing it and what if I could solve it or not. And then I told her, I don't think this is going to work. And just based on that, she was like, are you going to quit then? I'm like, yep. But no, don't worry about it. Let me do me. And
I will be fine, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and the market was also quite good back then, so I didn't worry too much about that. But I made a decision, and that happened.
I think it's great the way that you put things down, like to a virtual scale in your mind. You know, like you start considering the pros and the cons, which is something very critical that we all should doing, especially if you're thinking about switching careers. Because many times, we tend to take gut decisions based on our current feeling with the company, which is okay, right? We are humans at the end. And especially if you feel that you're getting mentally in the wrong place, you should start to approach a new decision. However, at the same time, you don't want to take this decision only out of this feeling.
Yeah.
So you should always think like, okay, perhaps is this the right moment, or maybe can I just carry on just a little bit, you know, can I look myself around? And that's a kind of very critical thing to do.
Yeah, I think everybody should do that, especially if you're in a difficult position. Like, what is being difficult? Is it that colleague being difficult? Is it you don't like the work, or you don't like the industry? There are many things. I don't want to have people make rational decisions or irrational decisions. But the thing that was important for me is I wanted to look at, okay, what am I faced with? Can I change it? Do I have an impact? Do I feel happy doing this? And if the answer comes back as a no, then why am I still there?
Yeah.
Especially if there are plenty of jobs out there. So if the market is slightly different, I would also second guess my decision and maybe take a little bit longer. But still, I couldn't do that for a year. I couldn't do that for 6 months. I was like, when I made the decision, I was like, this isn't going to work for me. Then it has to come to an end soon. But it's the mental scale helped a lot, because with that you could say, okay, nice people, it's a nice brand, and this was bad, and this is good, and this is bad, and eventually you make a decision, and that's it. You stick by it. So
because you said I went on vacation, I got the time to think about it.
Yeah.
I had a conclusion about that specific job. What did it taught about you? So not about Bol, not about a position, but what did it taught about you?
The way I looked at it is like, how much could I have? What could have done differently? I think that's the most important thing. You also have to look at yourself before you make such a decision. You can say, hey, they are bad, this is not good, but that's not the case. The most important thing was, do I see a future there? Can I change things? Can I make an impact? And if that's not a yes for you, then it's over.
Yeah.
And if you, so we can't go into details, of course, but if you look at, if you could see my mental scale, then you would understand my rationale.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I'm still a very happy customer of Bol.com. I still am in touch with a lot of folks there that I worked with. I recently did a workshop with them. So from that regard, I have no grudges, no hard feelings. Even the manager that I resigned at, I still talk to him on Google Cloud Summit, for example. So it's not that I hate a company or I hate that period in my life. I just was the wrong person at that say right place. It's also and many people have joined the company after me, and they say, "Wow, it's the best place ever." Yeah. So sometimes you also need to look at what hands of card you get dealt with, and my hands of card was not good at that point, and that's what it.
And it's also taking your responsibility if you have the feeling like, okay, this is what it is, exactly what you're saying now. You still have a very good relationship with previous companies.
Yep.
And if you're waiting too long, you might get more frustrated, then at the end, you might harm the relationship, and then it's a different story. Yeah.
Because then eventually with the silent quitting modus, people only remember that you did nothing and that you were just fooling around. And because that's the other side that people are forgetting with silently quitting. People see that. At some point, that person, he doesn't do jack shit. And then bottom line is, at some point you might need somebody's referral. Somebody will ask feedback about you somewhere else, and they'll be like, that guy? Nah. He doesn't do much. And that's something you don't want. So don't burn any bridges. Hypothetically, if I burned my bridges back then and said, you guys suck and I'm the best, oh, wow, I have to engage with them at Google now. Hi, I'm back. So, and especially within IT, the world is super, super small.
Yeah.
And that's something you need to also to foster. So take care of your relationships and make sure that wherever you are, live in a good way.
Yeah.
And which are the key points that you consider once jumping into a new job? Aside of a suitable enough salary, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we do for a living.
You have to pay the bills. I think salary is one thing, but for me, it's a challenge. What does the job offer me?
The driving factor, let's say.
Yeah. So if I join a company which is, I don't want to name any companies because I don't want to bash any companies, but if the role entails standing at the conveyor belt and doing your task and going home. If that's the culture, I'm out.
That's what they call the 9 to 5, right?
The 9
and
to
the
5,
average
the
idea.
Joe average. That's not my thing. For me, it doesn't work. It has to be challenging. So after Bol.com, I joined a startup, and that was that was a whole different world because now you're faced with scaling challenges. So I was like employee 16, maybe 20 back then.
Oh, yeah.
I came in, and it was a beautiful mess. And we started getting the shop on order, and business was booming. We were selling more. I was actively selling. I was consulting. I had the title of a COO, but in all honesty, back then in a startup that was heavily growing, I was everything. Like everybody was everything.
Yeah, roll up the sleeves and...
Yeah, roll up the sleeves and get stuff done. But then you're faced with whole different challenges. I mean, oh my God, we have this opportunity at this customer, and they want... I was consulting, so they want 15 engineers next week. And you're like, what? We hired 2, they're starting in 2 months. What do you mean? And everybody else is already staffed. So these kind of challenges are completely different. So you need to be creative. You need to figure out how you can help customers. So come up with a ramping plan and whatnot. But also like, oh, the customer resigned. Oh, wow, we were expecting the revenue. And so it's very turbulent compared to the conveyor belt, the 9 to 5. So there was no 9 to 5. There was no 9 to 9. There was just whatever Slack popped up. You looked at it like, oh boy, there's something happening, or there's a nice challenge. And we had ups and we had downs, and that was slightly different. That was a different world. But I had fun, and I learned a lot.
I think, when I read the way that you describe yourself as engineer at heart, I think this is actually what an engineer does, right? Fixing problems, trying to find innovative and different ways, to find a solution out of that without necessarily following the script, isn't it?
True. That's where I started with. But I was also an engineer that sold the most. I was, for quite some time, in a bit of a technical service management role, where I was like nowadays they call it a TAM, like a technical account manager. I went to customers, had conversations about, I was back then in managed hosting, conversation about how they were doing, how their business is doing. We discussed uptime and upcoming changes they would like to have. And then I talked to them like, wait a second, look what I have. I have some graphs for you. And I looked at the graphs and you saw utilization was high. And then I told them they needed more. And they said, oh, wow, coming from an engineer's mouth, it's different than from that slick salesperson. And I went back and I just made sure the change was in the system, and all of a sudden we were billing them more. This was pay as you go, but then like early stages before public cloud was a thing. So I remember one of my colleagues there telling me, like, you're weird. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you are an engineer, you can talk tech, but you can also talk to customers in a salesy way and understand how the business works and how the company works. And I was like, I think so. I didn't have a real explanation for it, but I kind of understood that that's something I like. So being a diehard engineer, not my thing. I just know enough to play along. I can, of course, do whatever I'm saying I can do. It would take me longer than your average consultant, but I can get it done. They come to me with questions when they get stuck, so I'm capable enough. But it's not where my heart lies. I would not be. I don't want to be a consultant, or I don't want to be an engineer that only builds stuff and deploys code every day. Again, for me, it feels a bit boring. I like to be in front of customers and engage with them and say, but why? So back at Container Solutions, I did this many times where we went to customers and they said, we want Kubernetes because our developers want that. And then I was like, but why? And then we had this thing called the Cloud Native Discovery, which is super fun. You go to a customer for 2 days and you get to ask them a lot of questions. And you look in the room, you see 10 people sitting there, and you see different attitudes, different behavior. And after half a day, I can already tell you who doesn't want to change, who doesn't want anything to happen, who hates consultants, for example. And you also see people who are like, oh my God, change is coming. And these kind of things that intrigue me. Maybe the psychology of engineering intrigues me even more. And what I liked about that, real change could happen out of that, and the right way. Not, I want a gimmick, I want a new tool, I want a new toy. It was mainly like, what does this company need to progress? We also talked about competition. What are other companies doing? How are they developing software and products and innovation? So it was way broader than only engineering. We also brought in marketing elements and everything. And our end report usually consisted of advice. Also, maybe a bit of Kubernetes, what they wanted, but all the way to the end of the life cycle. And we firstly started with improving whatever they had. So, for example, the development process. That's broken. Why do you need Kubernetes if your development process is broken? So we fixed that, came with improvements and modernized that to a cloud-native way. And then, of course, you bring into containers and everything else. And by doing that, I learned, and I also did that a bit at my prior job as a TAM. So I learned that I think the bridge between engineering and people, sales, getting stuff done, that's the element I like. And now I'm, of course, in a sales organization as a partner engineer. That for me is the sweet spot because I can do both. I can still talk about engineering and still talk about customers and what they should or shouldn't do. I can talk to you, to your consultant. So for me, I'm in the sweet spot if I look at the things I like.
Well, I'm curious about, because we all know container solutions, and we talked about it before that you were one of the people who built it up and made it successful.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging, either way, situation or part for you in that time? How did you approach it, and what did you learn from it?
So I came into a position that I had some experience in, I would say, but also a lot of elements that I had. I mean, I did interviews in the past, but I wasn't responsible for hiring.
So you started as?
I started for the first month as a bit of a delivery manager role.
Yeah.
But we changed that like in 4 months to a chief operating officer because there wasn't any. And I was mainly focused on the operations and making sure that the company functioned properly. But there were a lot of things. With hyper growth, you learn things that you didn't foresee. Because if I look at the plans they had initially, it was like, we're going to grow X. I'm like, oh, awesome. And then X was achieved in 3 months. And then okay, this was almost, or 6 months. Was our year target has been achieved in 6 months. And people are knocking on our door. Everybody wants something from us. And we were a hot brand back then. So you get faced with different challenges. You couldn't foresee them. You couldn't say, okay, I'm going to read a book about this and understand how this works and then execute it. It's like running, flying at the same time. And then sometimes we just explain it like you're flying an airplane with your building motors and no landing gear. So just... and I think what helped me a lot, Pini Resnick, the former CTO of Container Solutions, whatever I told him, his approach to things was never in a panic way. And maybe I panicked inside. I'm like, hey, Pini, this is happening, and what should we do? And he was like, well...
Stuff happens all the time.
But, I mean, Pini is such a great personality. If you look at how he sees things and how he looks at things and his answer, his response on things. And I learned a lot from him, especially if you look at... my initial panic on customer wants X or we're not delivering on Y and they promised a project here, and it was just go with the flow. And also with customers at some point, I just learned that they might want to do things and demand things, but in general, I cannot take off the magic hat and give you consultants and more people to do the project.
No.
So expectation management was a real thing, and I think dealing with these kind of unforeseen, it's easy if you have done a project and they want more people and you have people on the bench, great, easy.
Yeah.
But if you have to deal with different situations and you learn that on the fly and you grow from that, that's the best. I think that's for me what I learned the most. And the other thing was I've done interviews in the past, but I was never responsible for hiring. So I wasn't responsible if I said yes or no to a person eventually or made the offer or not.
Yeah.
And you learn it quite fast that we had an interesting recruitment process, but you learn quite fast that sometimes gut feeling is also a thing, and you need to take the gut feeling out. So biasness, like, oh man, this person has done X, Y, Z. But no, let a process, let multiple people figure out if this person is the right person, and
Yeah.
based on that make a decision. And the machine was at some point so well oiled that I wasn't even involved in initial interviews. I just was involved in the offer stage. It was like, okay, I'll make the offer. I'll have that final conversation. But that initially was scary because, oh my God, what if they hire some not so good person?
Yeah.
But
Mishire.
Yeah, mishire. But you have to accept the fact that that's part of recruitment, part of growing a company.
Yeah.
You live and you learn. You just have to deal with it. And if you try to hold on to everything, you cannot elevate. So there's this thing called delegate to elevate. That's super important. You need to be able to let other people in an organization do things that you can do better.
Yeah.
Maybe in the beginning can do better, but at some point they will excel.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to explain it 4 times or 6 times, but at some point you don't need to explain it, and they will do the job better. And I think that's eventually what it boils down to. But that was very hard because I was at some point like almost a control freak, controlling everything, and then having to let go and having to hire people that will do that in the future. And that was a challenge. That was definitely a challenge. But it worked out.
And you learned a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eventually, that's the end goal. Learning.
A question, because indeed you mentioned that you went to have this kind of holistic approach, let's say, within the company. And what did it take to get there? Because now you make it look like it was kind of just a passage, let's say. But for you,
I just woke up with that feeling, like instantly. No, you have to do your research. You have to read. Like there are plenty of. So I don't want to be the book guru person because if you look at Twitter, every problem has a book. You have to read this book if you don't understand how organizations work. Like, great.
There's a big industry behind it.
Yeah, there's a big industry behind it. But nevertheless, there are a couple of books that... So let me rephrase it. If you take elements out of certain books to understand how organizations work, how growth works, what the challenges are, how leaders behave, if you bundle that together, you can make a good assumption. Another thing is I was part of a business school course that I went to. And I met a person there who grew a company from 3 people to 2,500 healthcare consultants.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was the 2,500 plus. He was basically the CEO of the company until he sold the company, and now he lives on a boat and does rich things. But I asked him, and I told him, like, okay, but I'm faced with this, this, and this. And he was like, well, yeah, that happens. I'm like, but how did you tackle it? Well, he gave me an explanation which was not found in books, which was also not found in lectures whatsoever. He just said, you have to deal with disappointment. You have to deal with challenges.
Yeah.
And none of these books tell you like, oh, deal with challenges because that's important. They're like, no, pick the right leader, do this and educate them, blah, 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 take a business course, do an MBA. He said it's not that. He said 2 things. The first thing was like, deal with disappointment. So when you expect 100% for somebody you hire, expect just 40% and you won't be disappointed. And maybe the person will impress you and deliver 80%.
True.
The delegate to elevate is another thing. He built an organization underneath him to support the growth of the company, which is common. It's not something he invented. And the other thing was, he said, I never, ever, ever, and sorry for all the experts out there, never, ever would hire like super senior salesperson or super senior CTO. Or he said, I always want to hire from within. And if the possibility is not available to hire from within, he would hire somebody that would be moldable. And he said, you cannot mold a brick. I remember his words exactly. You cannot mold a brick. Because imagine, try molding a brick. It doesn't work. It's hard. And he said a lot of these super experienced sales leaders that work at the biggest brands sometimes are that experienced that they cannot change their behavior. And all of a sudden they need to sell healthcare. And they're like, yeah, I sold cars. I was the regional seller for Porsche. I can do this. And he was like, I don't think you can do this. And one other fun fact he said was, I still use it every now and then. If you look at the sales perspective, he used to hire people that had a sales background in a different background than he was hiring for. So he was in healthcare. And with healthcare, it's a lot of upselling, understanding what the needs are of a hospital, for example, and cross-pollination, selling more services. And he said the best salespeople were more in the facilities field. because he said a janitor that walks into a room and sees that it's leaking, he will fix the leak. But if you have a good janitor and spots something else, we also tell you like, hey, I think you should replace that. And based on that, if you plot that to his sales roles that he was hiring, was the same. The people came to hospitals and found more things to sell because more things were broken. Also in their expertise field and also outside. And when he understood there was so much demand outside their expertise field, he just added it as a branch in the company. And that's how we branched out to whatever he has sold eventually, and now sipping champagne in the morning on his boat. But yeah, that was a very interesting experience to learn from somebody who just was there as a guest lecturer to talk about his company and how he grew things. But when you get up close and personal with a person that has that experience, then you might be amazed.
Yeah.
It's a lot of out of the box kind of approach, let's say, because it's pretty common, for people, for example, approaching sales and say, no, I want people that is already experienced in this industry, if not even selling kind of the same product.
And it's very difficult to hire somebody else.
Yeah, which is understandable. But on the other hand, this conceptual thinking that you just mentioned seems going beyond. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will scream out loud something completely opposite, and I would understand because expertise matters. Well. Yeah, expertise matters. But definitely there's kind of connecting the dot to this kind of approach, and it worked out.
It's also giving somebody a chance. I think that's... I hired once a salesperson that had no experience in IT sales whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very hospitable. He understood customers. He was selling denim, specific denim fabric to his customers. But what he understood is that customers have different needs, that they have different tastes, and the way he just treated customers, he started off internally as internal sales, just responding to incoming emails and phone calls and such, and he did great. But if you look at it, nobody would give him a shot in IT sales because he had zero IT experience.
Yeah.
And then I think that's the most important thing. Sometimes you need to look beyond where somebody is right now and just look for the potential. But in a high-paced environment, we have no time to look for potential. We need a cloud engineer today.
Yeah, since yesterday even.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah,
that's the other angle.
And if you hire someone who hasn't, let's say, the required experience, indeed, you should make time to give the guidance, to be there, to help them. Yeah, and I find it interesting because I hear you saying that indeed you find knowledge in books. But also your situation, which you faced, your panic mode, some challenges you had. You might think, oh, I'm the only one with a challenge like this, and then you will have conversations with people around you, and you will notice very quick that a lot of people around you who already challenged it again and can help you very easily.
Yeah, it's a thing. You have to. So the other thing is when people are challenged, they don't often reach out to others like, "Hey, help me."
Yeah.
Like it's a bad thing.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe it's professional pride, which is the most horrible thing there is. Professional pride. What the F is that? I mean,
I know everything. I can do everything.
You can do everything. No, you're stuck. You cannot Google it. Go to a colleague and say, "Hey, listen, I have a blackout. I don't know how to do this. Can you help me?" Even if it's super mundane. I would rather have that than somebody spending a whole day trying to chew on a problem and not solve it. A famous Dutch coach, and I'm just joking, he's not that famous, but he's a great guy, Bas Den Uyl, a friend of mine, who does coaching at companies right now. And he also says, when I see two engineers behind one screen, it makes me happy. Because there is something happening,
togetherness,
pair programming, or somebody's explaining something to somebody else instead of doing chewing on a problem for days. I think that's key, and I think that's a culture you need to have in a company, because that only then you lower the threshold of this professional pride bullshit.
Yeah,
and you make people accessible for questions. And yes, you got hired to be that senior cloud engineer, but trust me, you don't know everything.
So if you're thinking of people being successful, you've joined indeed several companies. What do you think of what is really a success factor, or what should a company offer to make their people successful, or that they can indeed develop their talents?
Autonomy.
Yeah.
So autonomy can work in many ways, but so I'm not the PDP person, right? Personal development bullshit. I don't like that. I have to fill it in. I don't like it.
What a statement.
Yeah, it's fairly simple, because if you ask me what are you going to do in 5 years, God knows.
Oh, yeah,
What are you
definitely.
going to do in 3 years? I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, especially
Sorry,
when it
pardon my
comes to
language.
jobs.
Can we bleep it out.
Beep.
But if you ask me what are you going to do the next 6 months, I have an idea.
Sort
I
of.
think I know what I'm doing the next 6 months. And even then, I'm still readjusting my plans based on what's happening. I'm saying sorry to my manager for that, but no, it's a thing, and I think we have changed a lot in the industry, and then also in companies nowadays. But still, there's like, oh, you have to have a personal development plan. Where are you in 5 years? When I get that interview question, I'm like, seriously. I don't
not
even
going
know what
anywhere.
I'm going to do next year. I don't even know what I'm going to do in the next 6 months. I don't even know if I'm going to get hired. And you ask me like, what are your plans for the next 5 years? So I think the most important thing is you need to give people autonomy, and give them autonomy to a certain extent, and explain what the boundaries are. And hypothetically, in your example, as Xebia, as consultants, what are the boundaries? Well, boundaries, you help customers at least X amount of hours a week. And then in those hours, you can not do whatever you want, but you can jump on one of these side projects to help either company or internal tooling or something you really like, contribute to open source. Then you give people more autonomy. Yes, you need to do the work. Within the work even, you can have autonomy on making decisions. So if everything comes prefabricated to you and you just have to glue it together, are we not back at the conveyor belt? Like just putting lids on jars?
Yeah.
You need to give people, and also creativity is a very important thing in their future success, because only then they can fail, learn, adapt, and do it better.
Exactly.
And I think that's the whole idea that I have within what I think is super important within this autonomy movement.
Yeah, and also the what you're saying, the environment that you can have the autonomy, and you also should feel that you're able to make mistakes. That is exactly what I like. To be honest, my current role at Xebia is that indeed, if you ask me what are you going to do within 6 months, I have the same. I do know which direction I want to go, but ask me what are you doing in 5 years? Don't know. But we have the golden rule here: act now, apologize later. So we always
ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, exactly. So in the last 3 years, we did several things, like creating this podcast. It started with an idea, and within 3 weeks we had, or 2 weeks, we had our first episode. But it also comes along with feeling like, hey, if you make a mistake, it's okay, and we can learn from it, and then you can continue. So saying and really creating an environment as a company, that's do two different things.
Yeah. So sometimes I just read job descriptions and I look at, okay, what does this company say about themselves? And I'm like, you're lying.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing, right? The company saying, yeah, we get a lot of free time to do things, and then eventually it's just bullshit. I think that's the other thing where people need to look at. Like, you need to have a certain ownership of your work, but also the freedom, and also need to learn as you go. And nobody knows everything from the get-go. And even though how experienced you are, how certified you are, it doesn't really matter. You still need to learn things ongoing. And if you have the room to learn on the job, it's the best experience ever. If you don't have that, then I would ask your employer to make that happen, because it's part of the autonomy phase.
Yeah.
You can only become autonomous if you can learn things, do new things, and not do repetitive things. I think, that's something which is very important to me in a professional career as well.
Yeah, and you also mentioned your previous manager, who were a very big support for you. He sounded like a sort of Zen master.
He is.
Everything will be fine.
I used to call him Yoda every now and then.
Ah, exactly, yeah.
Not casually. Huh?
Yeah, he's Pini was is still a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And I didn't see him for quite some time, but we went to Denmark in April or so with some old previous colleagues from Container Solutions. And it was fun being together again. So yeah.
Yeah, so but also having a role model or someone which you can spare about things is very important.
Yeah, I think the sparring partner is very important.
Yeah.
So instead of having this wild idea tested at the customer, have the wild idea tested with somebody internally.
First.
Say, hey, listen, I have this idea. What do you think about it? So another thing we also used to do at Container Solutions, like people, we encourage people to do talks at conferences. But before you could do a talk, you had to give it to us.
Yeah.
On a Friday afternoon when everybody was like tired of the week, having drinks, sitting on the couch, and then you had to do your talk. And you had to be receptive of very critical feedback. And then people were like, oh my, you're complaining too much about my talk, but it only can make your talk better.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And that's the feedback loop, which is also super important.
Yeah. A few interesting things already, huh?
Yeah. We're going through a lot of interesting
All the way.
bad
From
things, I would say. But it's everything connected.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it
it's great. And also, all this discussion, as you mentioned, about a lot of people say you need this to be successful. No, you need that. Many times become easily controversial because there are some sort of dominant narratives, also due to the rise of self-awareness industry, etc. That I'm not necessarily criticizing, but we tend to forget that there's no one size fit all.
Exactly.
There is the so-called 5 a.m. club, like where the people waking up early in the morning. And if it works for you, I mean, go ahead with that.
Doesn't work for me.
That's it. But indeed, it's not the only way to be successful, let's say, or to enjoy life.
The other thing is that the whole threading culture on Twitter, you see like 10 successful tips to become a successful entrepreneur. Wake up at 4 in the morning, do burpees at 5 in the morning. Like, seriously, come on. Like, this is not really helpful. People are like completely amazed by these people. They try it out for a week, feel miserable, and then, oh my God, it doesn't work for me.
Exactly, yeah.
But same with the book culture, right? Reading books, it's a massive business. And if you solely rely on books like how to become a successful entrepreneur, read a book and then like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go to the Chamber of Commerce.
You need a school of life for that.
You need a school of life, you need a school of the hard knocks. That's what you need.
Yeah.
I think that's a big problem of today. Everything has to happen rapidly.
Yeah.
And when I every now and then, I still have to go to a friend of mine who teaches economics at the school. And he once called me like, hey, on speaker. He's like, hey, can you talk? I'm like, yeah, what's up? And like, you're on speaker in my class. And they're like, we will never work at Google or some other company. And I said, I have a friend who works at Google. Here he is. I'm like, hey guys, I work at Google. They're like, you really work at Google? Like, I work at Google. So I'm going to give him a guest lecture about not Google, but mainly about how this career life works. So you don't wake up, graduate, whatever, and oh, wow, you're at Google. That's not how life works.
No.
Life works. So it's exactly like the mountain slope you see from a distance. Like, oh wow, the person is at the top or has reached a summit. But if you zoom in, you see the pitfalls, you see the spikes. You see. I think that's what people often forget. And then they go to Twitter and read this thread about how to be successful and wake up at 5 in the morning because that's what successful people do. Yeah.
Once I heard that your dream job is your fifth job, dream job, let's say. So let's say the first 4 jobs are just to practice to find out what you're good at it, or.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But I do think at your fifth job you might know better because. Let's be honest. When you finish your education, you studied 4 years or more, and now I be able of doing this or that. But to be honest, when you just start with your first jobs, you're just finding out like, hey, where are you good at it? What are your talents? What is giving you energy? You don't know that much.
I learned a couple of things in the beginning. And that's mainly because I got that drilled in almost in a military way. I worked at Dell, and Dell has this thing about customer So customer obsession is Amazon, but they have this thing about customer is always right. Customer has to be supported. And if you're in technical support and somebody calls you like, hey, my servers are down, I'm losing money, help me now. And that kind of
I heard a panic.
Yeah, well, yes, that was one of my first panics was that somebody said, we're losing around 100K an hour, which was still minor, but for that company it was a lot. And for me, it was like,
Yeah.
but you just deal with it. And the most important thing is you listen to a customer, try to understand. And what they had, mandatory, and I think if anybody who ever worked at Dell technical support sees this podcast will recognize it, they had a heat check. And that means at the end of the conversation, although you know the customer is happy or unhappy, you have to ask. And if you ask, like, are you happy with our service, yada, 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 then you have done the right job. And sometimes there will be like trainers listening into the phone calls. And if you didn't do it, you were in big trouble. So I learned this customer obsession thing quite early. And I think that shapes you. But to come back to your earlier thing, throughout my career, I've followed that thing. I followed two things. IT in general, problem solving, break fix, all the way up to operational. Now in Google Cloud, I'm less into the operational side, more on the sales side, but it's still IT, right? IT systems, cloud computing. And the other thing is customers, obsession for customers. And if you look at my next jobs, it's all revolving on customers. So none of them, I've never worked for a company that builds cars. And I was doing the IT for cars. That's indirect. For me, it was always customer facing. So even after Dell, I joined a consultancy for a year. Customers. I joined managed hosting, customers. I did Bol.com, internal customers, but still customers. And Bol.com is next level if it comes to customer obsession as well. And now with Google, again, it's all about customers. So I think for me, looking back at my careers, they're the red lines. But to come back to your earlier point around the fourth job?
Fifth job is,
I don't know. For me, the thing is, and this might sound weird, every time I have a job, I land a job, I have fun at it, I can never enjoy that moment. I was like, okay, but what's going to be next? There's always this thing of next happening in my head.
And do you like that?
It keeps me alert. It doesn't mean I'm actively recruiting Google, so no worries. But please don't reach out for recruitment things right now. But now the thing is, I don't know. I don't want to be too comfortable somewhere. Like, okay, this is where I'm going to retire. Retire? No. So I had this conversation a couple of days ago with somebody. It's like, yeah, but you work at Google. What would be next for you? I told him, like, well, NASA maybe. You can go anywhere. Like, don't let your imagination stop you because you work at Google. Maybe my next job will be at a startup. Maybe the next job will be at a smaller company.
Or you will live on a boat.
No, I cannot do that. That's another thing I cannot do yet. So for me, I always want to figure out what's next. I always look at the future. Doesn't mean I have to go somewhere. Doesn't mean I'm silently quitting. Don't do that. But for me, being comfortable somewhere for too long, that doesn't work. So now I'm 3 years in my current role at Google. Yeah, I'm still having fun. As long as I'm having fun and being challenged, it's good. But it doesn't mean that I don't check our internal careers page, because then maybe something pops up which might be interesting for me or not. And I think that's the most important thing. Don't be too comfortable.
And keeping curious. And as I know you're also indeed always curious, but also you keep developing yourself.
Which is
eager.
important. Because if you look at IT 10 years ago, IT is now, the whole world has changed. 10 years ago, cloud was a thing. We're not sure. And 10 years prior, people said, internet, it's not going to happen. Or maybe a bit longer. But just to put it in perspective, if you don't keep up with whatever is happening, then you'll get this knowledge gap or even a cultural knowledge gap. And then what? And I had conversations with people that have worked for 10 years at company X and did 10 years the same job. And nowadays in cloud, that job doesn't exist. What do you do then? Find another company where you can still do the same or upskill. And the nice thing about the time of age we live in, there's a wealth of information out there. swipe a credit card and you can do courses. And it doesn't have to cost you $1,000. It's 20, $30 you can do courses. So if you are stuck in your career and you're not willing to invest time, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And energy and maybe a little bit of money to get educated on topic X, Y, and Z, then you're feeling sorry for yourself for no reason.
And you should also be aware, I guess, of because you're referring to someone who is in the same job for 10 years. So not everybody has the same needs of developing themselves. But you also should be aware of like in what context are you living. So is the company supporting you? How are your friends developing themselves? How is your partner supporting you? Because I do think if you in the same sort of environments, it might be also harder to step up that game.
Yeah, but I think I had numerous of these conversations. It's just conversations I have with people. If you try to find reasons not to do it, you're just feeling sorry for yourself and actually don't have the guts to do it. I'm not saying quit your job and go educate yourself on becoming cloud native or whatever. Yeah. That's not the thing. Just carve out 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
Just 4 hours a week.
Yeah, exactly.
And spend time and get educated. That's the only thing you need to do to get upskilled. I'll give you a simple example. I know a database administrator, great person, great. But let's be fair, the databases he is administrating are not being administrated on cloud because that's a managed service.
Yeah.
So the advice I gave to this person was educate yourself on cloud databases. Yeah. What are the differences? How do they get deployed? How do you maintain them? And what does not get maintained? And focus on the top layer of the database where you can make a difference instead of running scripts to clean up schemas. I mean, that's not a thing anymore. That's going to be... I wouldn't say a race to zero, but I would say a race to 25. And it's rapidly declining. Cloud databases are a thing. Every database has them as a managed service. And managing physical or data center-based databases with the whole stack is not a thing of today anymore.
No.
And then you either wake up and smell the coffee and try to change, or you wake up and smell the coffee in a different way because you're standing at the UFA coffee machine and smelling it when you're unemployed. I'm
at the end,
exaggerating a little bit, but it is a thing where cloud databases, it's a massive market. And if you look at the market share that Google has or any other cloud provider currently has, it's eating away at the data center market in that regard. Yeah. So self-host things that are... It's in a decline. I wouldn't say rapid decline, but some cases it is a rapid decline.
Yeah.
And then what? So either adapt, adjust, and learn.
Yeah.
Or coffee machine at what is it, UFA?
Yeah. At the end, it's your own responsibility to.
It is, but sometimes you hear this conversation. I had interviews with people. I'm like, "Do you know Kubernetes?" And they're like, "No, but I would love to learn it." I'm like, "Why didn't you learn it yourself then?" Yeah, my company didn't allow it. I'm like, well, you need a notebook, you need Minikube, you can deploy...
you have YouTube?
You have YouTube, you can deploy a cluster in your notebook. Tiny cluster, but it behaves like Kubernetes. Voila, you know Kubernetes. And then people are like, oh yeah, actually I could do that. But I hate my current employer. I'm like, why are you bringing up the employer? Because it's irrelevant. This educational part, you have to do it yourself. Otherwise, you get stuck.
And probably that's also who you've... how you recognize passion, right? So if you have a passion for things, you will think about it when you close your laptop. You will be proactive in finding books or finding ways to develop yourself on that specific topic.
So easy nowadays.
Yeah.
I remember when I started in this industry, there were these massive books you have to dive into to solve problems. So I wasn't one of those people that learned Linux myself. I learned it the hard way later on when I had to learn Linux because some of my servers at customers were running Linux and they had questions. I was like, oh, how did this... Okay, I installed it on my computer at home and started playing around with it, but with massive books. There was no YouTube back then that could support you with proper content. There was no plural sites.
Or a great partner who provide quick lab stuff.
For example. No, there were just books. And then today you look at... It's overwhelming how much good content is there. You only need to kick up your feet, put on a YouTube video, and you're already there. You can already learn the basics and understand whatever you need to understand. And then later on, you can dive deeper. There's no, at least within IT, if I look at YouTube, There's so much content available.
So for the people who are thinking of developing themselves, and because the podcast is all about growth, right? That is the red line. You were saying when I'm doing the right things, I have fun and I got challenged.
Yeah.
So are that the specific 2 marks that you recognize, hey, I'm doing what I should do, I'm in the right place? Or are there any other signs how people can see, okay, now I'm doing what I should do? Or
Yeah, I think the whole learning aspect is fun and challenging, but there are also depth points in between where you're like, I'm not good enough. I don't understand this stuff.
yeah,
Pick yourself up and try again.
yeah,
I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes, where they try things and like, this is not for me. I hate this stuff.
yeah,
Yes, let it be. It's like the video game. You get stuck in that level.
yeah. Try again.
Try again. Stop. Come back at it next day. Like, the clue was in the corner. Now I solved it. Which is the same in life. Which is the same in learning new things. You just need to pick yourself up and try again and make it happen. And if it doesn't challenge you, or if you do it half-heartedly, then you can complain all you want about X, Y, and Z. But the problem lays with you. I think the motivational thing is another thing. You have to be motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And what's your motivation? If you don't have a clear plan, I'm going to learn this, this, and this, and this, because then I am qualified enough to take this job. I really would like to have this dream company.
Yeah.
Make a plan.
Yeah.
And if your plan only consists of upgrading your CV without knowledge, and then hate it that you failed the interview, it doesn't work that way. So make a plan. Make a plan and go for it. But you have to be passionate about it.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. If you're not passionate, then not going to happen.
And trust the timing. That's also a part.
Yeah. And maybe fourth time I'm going to say it, pick yourself up and try again. You fail the interview, great. Learn from it. Ask for feedback. Feedback is a gift. Ask for it.
Yeah.
Get feedback. Act on it. Work on it. Do it better next time.
Yeah. And how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a victim? So I got hurt, I got rejected, and now I'm not good enough, and blah, 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 blah. Or you see it as a playground. Indeed, you just try again. Yeah.
It's you just have to try again.
Yeah.
Make it an opportunity instead of a failure.
You know, an additional challenge that I will see in nowadays reskilling part, let's say, or education part, it's the overwhelming presence of content, which is, I'm not saying is a bad thing to have a lot of, different parts talking about a similar topic, if not the same topic. But also, if I put myself in the shoes of a person that is maybe having a career change, and you feel like everybody is telling you what is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. Or I remember myself in a slightly different context, right after graduation, I was having that classic blurry moment, like what I'm going to do with my life, I didn't have a career path set. I didn't have a title, let's say, that was leading already somewhere. And I had tons of friends or people that I was meeting around that were telling me, no, you should focus here, or you should focus there, or even this is the future. So the feeling is that everybody is always pushing you forward almost to sell you something, you know what I mean? So what would you suggest to people when they have to, let's say, go through reskilling or upskilling, but to choose their references wisely? Let's say navigating through the overwhelming amount of content.
Yeah, I think the big question is, let's say reskilling. What is your end goal? If the end goal is, I want to work at company X, I'll hit the big red button, because that's not the end goal.
Sure.
That's a circumstance that happens if you get into that field. Maybe it's company Y. I think a lot of people focus too much on the end goal itself. Like, I want to be there. No, you want to upskill yourself from here to something in that region. So if the scope is that wide, great, then you'll get there. If the scope is too narrow, if you talk to your lawyer friend, they say, you should become a lawyer, go back to school, study for 4 years, because lawyer is awesome. You'll follow the kind of lead, yes, good luck. But if you're like, I like the legal industry and maybe I could do something there. Oh, whoa, that broadens the scope from lawyer to all kind of things within the industry. So if you focus on a certain industry or a certain job type, then you need to focus, okay, what do I need to get there? And that's a matter of planning. I think there are plenty of companies that could give you an opportunity when you're halfway there to learn on the job, but it comes with a cost.
Yeah.
probably lower salary because you're learning, you're still junior compared to a senior engineer, in engineering case then. But don't plot it on a specific job alone, because who says that you can be a lawyer? Maybe you won't even pass the exams whatsoever. Then you spend your whole 4 years of time to get somewhere which you never get. Instead of that, make your end goal broad enough that you can adjust your plan. So the plan will not look like this. It will look like this maybe, and then at some point you'll get to the end goal. I think the other problem is we live in a time and that everything has to be fast.
Yes.
I want to become a millionaire tomorrow. I'm going to buy a Bitcoin tomorrow. I have a Lamborghini. Like, no, it doesn't.
Pressure.
Everything has to be so fast. I don't know why, because I'm not from the era. I'm older. No, but I think the newer generation, everything has to happen like instantly. Tomorrow is too late. And yeah, I don't know. Savor the moment. Take your time. I think the worst thing that could happen is that you get hired at like a massive company after you just graduated. Because if you put yourself on that level and then you don't make it there, you want a new job, you'll
downgrade yourself.
Yeah, there's a gap, and it feels like downgrading maybe. Like I am senior enough to say whatever. If I leave Google and I join a small startup, I know why I'm doing this. I have the credentials. I have the work history to support this. No problem. But if you join and in your end goal is to join this massive company and you get there, and then what? What's next for you then?
Yeah.
So I think, in all fairness, build your career up in phases. Take your time. Listen to older folks like myself. Explain to you how such a career path works, and that you have to take sometimes one step forward, 2 steps back. It happens. It's part of life, and I think it forms you in a way that you can deal with many challenges in life, many curveballs that you might get. It's not only the job; it's many things that this could be useful to.
Yeah, and I do think also because of the overwhelming part, you should be careful with what kind of questions do you ask to who, because I have the feeling that most times people are sharing their own experiences, their own reflections. So it's subjective, right?
Very subjective.
A few weeks ago, I was reading something, and it was about like that you could ask, "Hey, do you want comfort or do you want questions?" So you can think about if you ask questions, what do you want? What do you really need as a person? So you can be in the lead of, do you want advice? Do you want comfort? Do you want that people are brainstorming with you, or whatever? So what is their role? I do see, for example, in my environment, I know everybody has a different role. So I have people around me. For example, my sister, she's a real entrepreneur, and if I have questions about, hey, I have an idea, how can we develop it? I will reach out to her. Besides many other things, I have people around me who can help me with more the strategy side of things, or more just to relieve things, for example. I do think once you know which people around you have which role, you can be very specific in your needs and how to fulfill them. Because not everybody has the same, how do you say it, quality or talents to...
Or headspace even.
Headspace, yeah.
Features.
Exactly.
Characteristics.
If you ask someone for an entrepreneurial advice, that the person is more into avoiding risks, it's not the right sparring partner.
Or you ask somebody who works 90 hours a week on career advice, whatever career advice you get, I don't think it's the one you want.
Yeah.
But in their perspective, it's the best career advice, because look.
Exactly,
Look what kind of success the person has made. So I think in regard of overwhelming, it's the same with online content and everything else.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
If you broaden your search, if you make a plan, then you can narrow your search within your plan. Because then you can search on specific topics that you want to learn more on.
Exactly, yeah.
Instead of asking a broad question to a person, you can ask a specific question, and you take the information. And then you eventually pick all the things you need, and that will help you progress. Because otherwise you go from lawyer to businessman, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
To,
I mean, it's good to keep certain degree of flexibility and to keep some doors open in your life, but at the same time, the goal is to reduce the noise and have more frame. You know, as you said, where do you want to be in terms of having a blueprint and be open to develop passion, change with life, curiosity, everything that makes you stick with a specific job, career, industry.
Yeah.
Well, together with your professional experience, I see also that you're very involved in community events.
Yeah.
So, for example, together with Annemieke, and she's here with us today, you both founded the GCP user group BeNeLux, which is the most, I would say, influential Google Cloud group in the whole BeNeLux area.
Yeah, I think we need to do something with Belgium and Luxembourg at some point, but yes.
Oh, yeah, it's getting there.
No, so we started the group. It started with an idea, and then I reached out to Xebia and with Walter.
Yeah.
Shout out to Walter. But I think Annemieke and Jorge are the driving forces from Xebia in this meetup. And we started off in the COVID era where we just had another online event. And it was okay. It was fun doing it, but it was not where my heart was. And we did it a couple of times, but you notice that energy is different.
Literally, yeah.
And then things started clearing up, and we did our first in-person one, and that was epic. I think that was the one at Google office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was high attendance, laughter, Dutch gezelligheid, as we say. So it was a success. And for me, the most important thing was there was also unity forming. So it was not only Google carrying it or only Xebia carrying it. It was a joint effort, and I think that helps a lot. And we extended the team now with a couple other members. So it's successful. Our next one is
28th of September.
28th.
Yeah.
At Palo Alto. Sign up if you attend. So it's going to be in Amsterdam. We have a lineup of speakers already. So the agenda is live already. So
yeah.
Be there or be nowhere.
Yeah, and what I do think a community like this, it really it has a lot of positive side effects, I guess. So for me, for example, before I joined Xebia, Google was just I knew Google, but it was just a big partner, and it was just Google. And now it has such Google is so much more. So you do see the people behind it. You do see the culture.
It's a bit accessible.
Yeah,
Google
exactly.
Is a person, or at least multiple persons that are, because we also have speakers from Google attending every now and then. We have people out of the Amsterdam office. So when people are like, "Oh, you work at Google, and can I ask you a question?" Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And they ask super random questions, sometimes very specific about the product, but in all fairness, it's fun. And people are like, "Oh, can I add you on LinkedIn?" I'm like, "Why are you asking?"
Yeah.
Connect.
Go for it.
Yeah. It lowers the barrier.
It lowers the barrier indeed.
Yeah.
And our following has been growing.
Yeah.
And happy about the results. It's not massive yet. It's not conference style yet. Maybe someday.
Yet. Indeed.
That's maybe an ambition that we'll do some user cloud, Google Cloud user group meetup event. That would be like a nice end goal.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're still growing, and I think community is super important. Giving back, also receiving from the community. If you look at, we have speakers from the community, we have customers that are hosting us, a partner is hosting us next time is Palo Alto. So for us, it's very nice to be bigger than only that Xebia and Google relationship. So it's growing, and it's positive.
And we spoke about it before, that it gives engineers a good opportunity to practice with giving a talk. So most of the time it starts either way within your company, then you will try to give a talk on meetups, and then hopefully
it lowers the barrier for people.
Yeah.
So just try your talk.
Also because I think many companies, even popular ones, perhaps they don't give the chance to everybody, or not everybody's taking the chance, to practice this talk or be more comfortable in speaking.
We're open for people who want to practice, so they're more than welcome.
Yeah.
It's a tone of informality anyway.
What's our email address again? Anyway, we'll share it in someone's video.
In the description.
Email us if you want to try and talk at one of our meetups. So that's...
So next one coming on the 28th.
Yeah.
Yes, 28th.
Palo Alto, Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Starting 17:30.
food, drinks, and
Yeah.
bring your good mood.
Yeah.
And, have a great night or evening.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the Google Cloud user group.
But we know that you're also active in the Kubernetes Community Days events.
Yeah.
Perhaps together with Alessandro.
Yeah,
was,
Alessandro.
Alessandro
Fossa.
yeah.
This started off in 2018, I think, where we had an idea on, I think it was called Kubernetes Community Days back then. Anyway, Kubernetes Days or something like that. We did a small event together with Alessandro, and that was successful. And then the rest is history, I would say. We have done recently one in April or March.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was April, March?
I think it was April. Yeah, we were there.
You were
Yeah,
sponsoring.
Yeah.
that was
So
big.
drum roll. First time on air, I'm going to say that we are organizing something in December. Fingers crossed, because we're waiting for one tiny thing to come through. And if so, then we're going to have Kubernetes Community Days happening in Utrecht.
Oh.
In the jaarbeurs.
Oh.
No, not in the massive jaarbeurs.
Oh, that big.
But we're expecting 250 people, give or take. Some sponsors, one room for talks. But so don't shoot me if it's not happening. But we're waiting for a final approval or something. So if you're interested,
Sneak preview.
yeah, sneak preview indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still involved, and the team has grown tremendously. We have a lot of Italians for some reason.
Huh?
No, we have great people in the team, and it's expanding. So more people are joining the team as well to help out with organizing. So as a true community event, we have a community now.
Are you still looking for people who?
We're always looking for people that can help in any other way if they have a certain skill or anything. There's no application process. It's just ping me or Alessandro, and then we'll have a brief chat on what expectations are, and you can join the secret group on Slack. No, it's not that secret. But we're organizing a new one, and hopefully we get the approval soon. So
Cool. Looking forward to it. Yeah, we will be there
and
again.
for us, it's a bunch of professionals that have day jobs, and they're not doing this out of. There's no profit to be made in this. It only costs money and effort.
Yeah, time. Yeah,
and time indeed. But it is likely-minded people that like to do this for others. So last time I was there at 7 a.m, handing out badges, preparing our partners, doing things in cold, rainy weather, but. We had a great event.
There was a lot of flow. I remember from the undergraduate level to very experienced.
Yeah, that's
people.
the other thing. We have experienced people. Also have who had student tickets. We have diversity tickets. We had partners also giving away tickets. So from that regard, it's a community thing.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of people that would like to share more about the passion they have. So Kubernetes Community Days.
So the event on December is still on the make it, but eventually it's going to take place in Utrecht.
Ideally,
Fingers
I would
crossed.
say yes, it's going to happen, but there was one curveball we had on Thursday, which we're dealing with. And if we solve that one, then it's a yes, because the venue has already been reserved, and then probably it's going to happen. I'm excited. I hope it's going to happen, because it's in my hometown, which is actually Amsterdam, but I live in Utrecht nowadays.
Yeah.
So I call it a hometown. But it's in the Jaarbeurs, so it's a nice venue, and it could be a nice event. So hopefully
we can come by bike.
Hey, I can even walk.
The real Dutch experience, I would say.
No, not that type of bike. Motorcycle.
The Google bike.
No, motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
That's the bike we're referring to. I don't even have a bike.
I don't, not yet.
I don't have a bike. I only have a motorcycle, which is my bike.
And usually, how many events do you guys have every year? You're aiming to have 1, 2?
So the rule, because it's a CNCF-backed event, you can only have one per location per year. Hence, we're now doing one in Utrecht instead of Amsterdam. But we have to see if it gets resolved or not. But if it happens, it would be great. And if not, then c'est la vie.
Yeah, let's see. We're quite attached to each other.
Yeah,
Casually.
well, we work together, and I mean, look at the logos. No, but these are the events that I'm currently involved in and are coming up.
Yeah.
Our meetups, and this is for me important thing. Community is an important thing. because only then you can get a good gathering, get a good understanding what people are feeling and thinking about your products and your solutions, and get acquainted with likely-minded people. I met awesome people at conferences that I never worked with, but are still friends. Whenever we meet at KubeCon, for example, they're like friends of KubeCon.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good thing. This year KubeCon was in Amsterdam. It's also funny. Next year Paris. So yeah.
Nice.
Fahd, it was a great conversation. We went through a lot of self-development, and I'm 100% sure people will appreciate that. Let us know in the comment below if you already went through some steps that I had previously mentioned, how it's going with your company, and what do you find successful and important in your career. Thank you again for being with us.
No, thanks.
I think I can speak for both of us when we say we'd love to have you again soon.
Yes.
Well, it was my first podcast, so...
And definitely not the last.
Let's keep it away.
Great to have you, man.
Thank you, man.
My pleasure.